So the press is biased against Donald Trump. What's new? Or what's news? And is that really a problem? I'm Steve Green for BillWhittle.com. This is The Right Angle on media bias and the right question. I'm here, of course, with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is made possible by the paying members of BillWhittle.com. Guys, there was a really interesting Margaret Sullivan column in the Washington Post, I think it was just this week, and the headline intrigued me because, you know, she used to be the ombudsman at the New York Times. Now she does a media column for the Post. And the headline was, "Is media coverage of Trump too negative?" And then she says, "You're asking the wrong question." You probably saw this study that came out a couple of weeks ago that in the first 3 months of the Trump administration, 90% of the stories were biased or negative against the incoming president, far worse than Barack Obama got, of course, and even worse than George W. Bush got back in 2001. And the guy who wrote this thing, the guy who did the study, Harvard professor Thomas Patterson, he says the real problem isn't the negativity, is that the press is focusing on personality, not substance. And he says it's not a partisan bias, but a journalistic bias, the tendency to seek out conflict instead of just reporting the facts. And the problem is that they're doing it for the ratings. They're doing it for the page views. Bill, are we entering a new phase of journalism here that's based on sensationalism? Is it the old problem getting worse? Can we trust anything we read?
Actually, I think the situation's the opposite of that. I think the situation's getting better for us every day. You know, there's that old adage in television news, if it leads, it bleeds. I mean, that's been out there for, sorry, if it bleeds, it leads. Got it backwards. That basically says if you've got nice footage of a train wreck or people, you know, bodies strewed around, you put that at the top of the show and that gets viewers. So this idea of sensationalism and you know, just this kind of showmanship ahead of the news has been a part of news since there's been a mainstream news media. The thing I think is interesting and hopeful for all of us, and we've talked about this several times before, is I think that they're finished. I mean, it really is like watching the last of the dinosaurs poking around in the gray ash trying to find something to eat. They are being replaced by genuinely unbiased sources, and that would be the American people. I mean, how many times already have we seen footage taken from an iPhone or you know, smartphone of some kind, uploaded directly to the internet by people who just happen to be there? They don't have a political agenda, most people. They're just there. The one that leaps to mind, and there have been many of them, was the Hillary Clinton stumbling into almost passing out on the 9/11 morning, which we never would have seen otherwise. And as I've said also before, the response time for this, not only do we get a view that we would never have gotten before, but we get it like that. You know, we get it instantly. It's uploaded, and so I think the internet means that these people cannot get away with this any longer. They're losing subscribers. They're losing viewers. Everything is moving away from them, and that may, in fact, Steve, be the thing that saves this quaint little civilization of ours, is the fact that we have finally developed the technology for common people to bypass the priesthood. That's never happened in history before. I hope it's not too late, but if there's hope for us, that's it.
You know, I agree with you on the broader point, but there's another data point that's kind of in contradiction, and that is the Washington Post, which is probably now the most relentlessly partisan newspaper, at least a major newspaper in circulation, is actually seeing its paid subscriptions go up since Trump was sworn in. Have they found a new key to profitability, do you think, or is this just one counterpoint?
It's an example of Sarah Hoyt's astute observation. You know, when businesses are in trouble, media businesses, they roll left and die, right? That's their business model. So as the Washington Post becomes more and more partisan, they pick up more and more people who are enthusiastic about partisanship, but their overall influence certainly goes down. And you would expect something like that, you know, have a rush of this with Donald Trump. People on the left just need something to rage about. But their product, the Times, CNN, Post, all of it, I can't get over saying this enough. Democracy dies in darkness is the banner on the Washington Post. It's their mission statement.
Yeah. I'm going to get to that part later because wow.
Yeah. But you can increase your numbers somewhat by playing to a smaller, more passionate audience. MSNBC has that strategy. Fox 2 to some degree.
Sure. All right, Scott, later on in Sullivan's column, she writes, the dirty little secret that every journalist knows: Trump stories drive ratings and clicks. The word Trump in a headline vastly increases its chances of getting attention. And she says, say what you will about the president, he continues to have one thing dead right. Donald Trump is a ratings machine. The question is it good for journalism, and is it good for Trump trying to get his agenda through, this living rent-free in the media's head?
Well, I'm torn because you could say, for example, that last week when the media was focused on James Comey's testimony before a Senate panel, that the most important or most interesting story of the week was really the White House's big push toward infrastructure in this country. That affects far more people than James Comey's situation does at all. So the White House declares it Infrastructure Week, and the media yawns and goes after the Comey story, and nobody writes a word about Infrastructure Week, okay? So, then when the president goes out of the country a few weeks ago, president goes out of the country, every story I read about the president leaving the country had at most 1 or 2 paragraphs about what he was doing overseas, and then immediately said, but he's got troubles on the domestic front. And then they start rehashing the Russia investigation and all that kind of stuff. You couldn't get, these reporters got on planes and went to other countries with the president of the United States and felt compelled to just pack their stories with fillers of what was going on back home because of what Bill pointed out. Not only if it bleeds, it leads, but the other phrase that a professor of mine in journalism school used to use was that news is coups, earthquakes, and 3-legged chickens. And I think we're constantly looking for the peculiar. We're looking for things. And so the odd thing about this all is that during the campaign, Trump was a master at getting the media to cover him because he would create a controversy where none existed. However, for some reason, once he got into office, he's lost his grip on that, and it's been kind of run by the media rather than run by him. So if he really wanted attention for Infrastructure Week, or really wanted attention for what his foreign policy was, he knows how to do that. He just hasn't been doing it well since he got in office.
Yeah,
drive a car off of a bridge or something.
Exactly.
Put a couple nuns in a van and have it go into the river, and then have them save them. Yeah, that would do it.
Scott, let me give you a kind of a more serious follow-up, because I think inquiring minds want to know this. Where was the third leg coming out of the chicken?
They never actually showed pictures back then, because when I went to college, it was in the pre-video era. We didn't actually have moving pictures of anything. It was all text, some clay tablets with bronze styluses, things like that.
Let me give you
Dr. Sanders, Colonel Sanders, completely nutty son who was working on that one in his laboratory.
All right, let me reel this in. Let me throw one more thing at both of you before I wrap this up. Chris Celica, formerly of the Washington Post, now with CNN, tweeted on Tuesday morning, back to Donald Trump, show me one fake news story or something we got seriously wrong. And the responses on Twitter were just brutal. One guy named Eddie listed 16 different examples before he had to take a break for a sandwich or something. And
I love it.
So the hands up, don't shoot, with all the anchors doing this in front of the camera. Can the media not help be clowning themselves like this? I'll throw it to you first, Bill.
No, they can't help it. And it's as we've been saying, this is sort of the macro thing that's been evolving over the last several years. We're only starting to see it now with some clarity after Donald Trump was elected and inaugurated. We actually have a feedback loop now. It used to be that the media was like a lighthouse, or is that what lighthouse is? Poor analogy, because lighthouse is useful. They would be like a loudspeaker, and they would be blaring out this tune, and you had to listen to it, and there was nothing you could do about it. But now, because of the internet, there's echo, there's feedback, and when somebody like that says, just name one story, and here's 16, now I gotta go, it's the death of them. It's the death of their ability to pull the wool over people's eyes, and most importantly, Steve, it's not just fact-checking them, it's fact-checking them and mocking them. That's the thing about it, is just plain making fun of them. And the internet is so incredibly irreverent, it's just a bad idea for anybody to poll the internet about anything, just show me one case. And the greatest example was when one of you guys told the story about the Royal Navy wanting to name one of their new ships, and they said let's have the British public decide the name of the new ship. Maybe it'll be the Indomitable or the Churchill. It was Bodie McBoatface was the winning thing. You cannot tyrannize a system that is that flexible and original and irreverent.
And Steve, can I give you another example of this?
Yeah, please.
Yesterday's big news story, as we record this on Tuesday, yesterday's big news story was that President Trump held a cabinet meeting, and at the beginning of the cabinet meeting, as oftentimes they do, they invited the media to come in and spray the room. You know, they came in and get video and get pictures and stuff like that. And the president kind of went around the table, and he asked his colleagues, the vice president and the members of the cabinet, to just kind of introduce themselves and say what they do, you know, for the sake of the media. And there's a lot of people there that may not be household names. Well, instead, Vice President Pence started off talking about how blessed he was to work in the Trump administration. And then everybody else, taking their cue from the vice president, went around the table and talked about how great it was. But in the course of every one of their statements almost, they mentioned something that they were doing in their department that was a departure from what had been done in the past. Now, do you think the news story was, wow, look at all these initiatives happening in the Trump administration? I grant you, the cabinet meeting was funny at that part. I mean, it was pathetically funny. But there was also news being made there. And a real reporter would have followed up with HUD Director Ben Carson and said, hey, tell me more about this initiative. And with Energy Secretary Rick Perry and say, hey, tell me what's going on at the Energy Department.
Yeah, that's what
Nobody
I wanna
did
know
that.
about. Yeah, I want to get the quick laugh, sure, because, you know, they're politicians and bureaucrats, and we should absolutely laugh at them. But give me the meat of the story, too. You know, let me wrap this up. Bill, you mentioned the Washington Post's motto, democracy dies in darkness. Well, here's the thing. There's a huge difference between shining a light and just running around starting fires. And I think we know which job the media prefers to do today. And that is the right angle on that. Thanks for watching. And you know, we love it when you, or we like it when you like our videos, but we love it when you share them. So click the share button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.